I was wondering if any of you had the same problem I had, where for some reason all of the links to this was taken off my calendar. Is that something that you did, Eve, or you're starting afresh or something?
It's possible there was we had to reboot, like had a new like an update every like 3 months or something like that, where there's like new I don't know what you call it exactly, but that happened, I think, the 2 episodes ago.
Oh, okay.
So that might be what it is or was.
Okay.
Sorry about that if it disrupted stuff. But hey everyone, this is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour. I'm coming to you from Tiohtià:ke, which has long been a meeting point of various First Nations, otherwise known as Montreal. Hope everyone is having a good evening this evening. So I guess I'll just delve right into it, and hopefully we'll have some time for some back and forth. Today, Canada announced sanctions against some very rich, prominent people in Haiti, which is quite interesting, including, so they announced Ronald Deeb, Sherif Abdallah, and Gilbert Bijot. So all three of Middle Eastern descent, Middle Eastern descent kind of moved to Haiti at the late 1800s and have very much been the U.S.'s main sort of surrogates, if you like, in Haiti historically. So this is quite Bijot is the wealthiest Haitian, widely viewed as the wealthiest Haitian. He's also Israel's diplomat in the country. So some people say he's even a billionaire. So this is quite significant. I would say it kind of goes in this direction. I don't know if I'm overplaying this hand here, but that the government has not been able to get the foreign military intervention and has kind of boxed itself in a bit with regards to announcing that things were a disaster in Haiti and there needs to be drastic action and stuff like that. And that they've now clearly sanctioned a whole lot of prominent Haitians that are all three of these individuals are closely connected to the PHTK, to Martelly, to Jovenel Moïse. So this is definitely interesting development. We'll see where this goes. I think a number of them are actually U.S. citizens. So that's also interesting. With regards to Iran, I'm sure people saw that there was a lot of press about that the morality police were being disbanded. It's a little bit unclear what if that's correct or whatnot. My understanding is that they've been kind of taken a backseat over the past couple of months since the protests began. What I thought is interesting, so La Presse has an article about it today. And in the La Presse article, Quebec Solidaire MP, or member of the national legislature in Quebec, Ruba Gassal, who's someone who's definitely on the sort of left, viewed as on the left. She's actually one of the only elected officials that signed the call for Canada to not have a seat on the Security Council. I believe she signed that, and she actually did a little statement on the Palestine question. She's of Palestinian descent. She's quoted in the La Presse article being like, this is a good development. And then she says, les gens répètent qu'ils ne croient plus aux réformes. Et il faut que ce régime qui a trop de sang sur les mains tombe. So it's basically saying that this regime that has too much blood on his hands has to fall. And I just find it kind of remarkable how a left Quebec Solidaire member of the national legislature here in Quebec, that they would say that, feel comfortable just sort of saying publicly the regime has to fall. It just seems to me quite out of place, and the extent to which there's this whole kind of ethos of that we can sort of decide, or it's our opinion whether the government in Tehran stays or goes, or it really speaks to how kind of far along this process of trying to overthrow the government in Iran Canadian political life has gone. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal, which to me suggested, just kind of like proved to me that this protest movement is not actually supported by most Iranians. It basically said that there were celebrations after the US beat Iran in the World Cup. And I don't know, but I'm pretty confident that the vast majority of Iranians do not support the US beating Iran in the World Cup. And if you got to the point where you're supporting the US beating Iran in a World Cup match, you would be viewed as very outside of the bounds of mainstream Iranian political life. And the Wall Street Journal reported that I think in the north of Iran, there were celebrations after the US defeated Iran. There was also a story in the Globe and Mail that was about how in the second match, because there was a whole story about how in the first football match, the Iranians didn't sing their national anthem. And in the second match, this Globe Mail story, it was written not a wire service, written by the Globe Mail reporter on the ground, saying that the Welsh team sang their national anthem with more gusto than the Iranian team did. And when you're at the point of appearing in a Canadian newspaper about how strongly the Iranian national football team sang their anthem one way or another, I think it just reflects that we are way down the path of effort at regime change, at intervention, at completely disproportionate attention to developments in that country. With regards to China, the Financial Times, or on the front page of the National Post right now, just had a story where they quote Melanie Joly, the foreign minister, who was at the NATO summit in Bucharest, and basically saying that Canada is going to move from one naval vessel up to 3 naval vessels to be patrolling the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea. And she makes this real hard case that we have to make sure the Taiwan Strait is free. And she says we're going to be sending more naval vessels with the Americans to, quote Melanie Joly here, enforce the international rules-based order. The US, of course, is one of the few countries that hasn't ratified the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So the irony of Canada saying it's going to go halfway across the world to enforce an international rules-based order alongside the US with regards to the Taiwan Strait is fairly significant. But this is the ramping up of tension, and I think that the Indo-Pacific strategy is really Canada's bid to match U.S. hostility towards China. And there's a good piece, very good piece in Rabble titled "Canada's Indo-Pacific Strategy: From UN Peacekeeper to U.S. Sentinel," and it's U.S. Sentinel State, and it's by John Price and Noam Chomsky. So I invite people to take a look at that. I put it on my Facebook and Twitter. And the NATO summit in Britain, or in Bucharest in Romania, they very much targeted a whole bunch more on focusing on China. There's another good story, I posted this today in Passage, titled "Canadian Media Promotes Restaurant That Sells Fascist Flags," and about a Toronto restaurant that is run, I guess, by Ukrainian sort of far right forces, and all of the flags that have appeared in CBC articles and other media outlets about this restaurant often actually include the flags, but don't make any mention of the sort of historical roots in forces that slaughtered Poles and Jews in Ukraine during alongside the Nazis during World War II. When I was in Vancouver on a Thursday, the organizer of the event, with the Communist Party editor at the People's Voice, he showed me a resolution that the British Columbia Federation of Labor resolution committee recommended. I'm not sure if it actually appeared on the floor, but it was passed by the resolution committee. And about Ukraine, and I'll read the whole thing, I guess. It says, because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 22nd and the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014, because Ukraine's resistance is founded in a solidarity of Ukrainian people, including Ukraine's Jewish community, Muslim community, including the Crimean Tatars, the women of Ukraine, and the LGBT plus community, because Ukrainian society is built on community Hromada, an ideology aligned with the labor movement, a view of change occurring from the bottom up, people dictating government, and not the other way around. The Federation will work with the Canadian Labour Congress to reach out and work with Ukrainian Canadian Congress to organize efforts to support displaced Ukrainians in Canada, and particularly in securing work. The Federation will explore divesting any of its assets that are directly and indirectly supporting the Russian state and encouraging affiliates to do the same. This resolution, I think, is very much reflective of the fact that the labor movement has not challenged Canada's role in the proxy war. The business about kind of suggesting that Ukraine's based upon, I don't know, sort of this community solidarity, a sort of socialistic kind of political dynamic, I found is pretty remarkable, considering in July, Zelensky's and the parliament actually scrapped all these union rights. Any company of under 250 employees, the union contract was just scrapped, and they took advantage of the state of emergency, where there's not really ability to oppose to protest this change. So I think it's quite remarkable to imagine this claim that Ukraine is sort of based upon some particularly solidaristic or socialistic kind of dynamic. And it's also kind of remarkable that they're explicitly saying to work with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, considering Ukrainian Canadian Congress was established in 1940 with the help of the Canadian government, explicitly to undermine the socialist and communist Ukrainian Canadian community, and continues to be an organization that's close to the bosses and often a fairly right wing nationalist kind of outlook. But the unions in Canada have, from what I can tell, stayed completely silent on the issue, with the exception of announcing financial contributions to support Ukraine. There's no real push for Canada to promote negotiations or criticism of sending weapons or earlier, even before the Russian invasion. I did this in my book Left Right: Marching to the Beat of Imperial Canada. I looked at the union's response to the Odessa massacre on May 2nd of 2014, where more than 40 people were killed at the trade union office in Odessa by far-right forces. Horrible massacre. And, it happened at the Trade Union Federation office. And I couldn't find any of the major Canadian unions that even mentioned it, didn't even put out any sort of statement. So, a killing of many, many people at a trade union federation office should be something that unions put out some message about, or criticism, or call for an investigation, but silence. And I think that's because, of course, those who were killed were viewed as sort of pro-Russian, and the Canadian media basically ignored the question. And so Canadian unions more or less ignored it, and they've basically ignored, all of Canada's policies that have ramped up tension around NATO promotion, Operation Unifier, much before Russia's invasion. So that's, I think, disturbing that the BC Federation of Labor, that's where they're at. On another issue this week, on the 29th, which I believe was Tuesday, it was the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People, which the United Nations declared, I think in like 1975, 76. And there was about, I think, 9 or 10 MPs that attended the Palestinian Parliamentary Friendship Group's event with the representative of the Palestinian Authority in Ottawa on Parliament. And unsurprisingly, the Israel lobby attacked this event. And anyone who knows anything about how this all works knows that the Israel lobby was going to attack this event in some way. They were going to find something that they were going to attack it and try to undermine solidarity with the Palestinians. And they latched on a couple things. First, they latched on to a criticism of Elizabeth May, and then they found that the editor of a Toronto-based paper, Arabic paper, Nasi Kataba, was one of like 150 guests in the room, and they said this is somebody whose paper has published Holocaust denying things. It's not exactly clear how legitimate this is, one way or another. I don't know. I don't, to be honest with you, really care. I know what drove this. It had nothing to do with concern whether this guy or his paper or somebody who worked his paper or some friend of the friend did this or that around what happened to European Jewry in the 1940s. It had entirely to do with discrediting Palestine solidarity and protecting a apartheid state's ongoing killing, dispossession, humiliation of Palestinians. And they were able to turn this into a big scandal, front page of the National Post, in the Globe and Mail, most of the major media. How dare these people, the MPs standing with Palestinians? How dare somebody in that room said something at some time that somebody didn't like? And it's remarkable, just a remarkable, it's so cynical. Everyone knows it leads to a whole outburst of racism against Palestinians and Arabs. It's all, of course, under the guise of fighting, of anti-racism, when in fact it stokes and spurs racism. And it's shocking to see how many progressives join in on it, and just they follow the beat of the Israel lobby. Whatever the Israel lobby wants to direct our attention to, they all of a sudden parse words. And, oh, well, this guy was really bad, and this guy's paper said something. It's actually remarkable to see how the power of the Israel lobby to shape the parameters of the discussion. And so the National Council of Canadian Muslims, partly in response to this kind of politic, they put out a tweet where they showed how Melissa Latzman and Pierre Poilievre, and of course, all these groups said, everybody who's in that room has to disassociate themselves from that individual. So the National Council of Canadian Muslims put out a tweet with a picture of Melissa Latzman Pierre Poilievre meeting with a guy by the name of Chaim Silberstein, who I guess oversees a group called Keep Jerusalem, who talks about how there's too many Arabs in Jerusalem. So there was a small group. Latzman, Poilievre were meeting with them, with this guy, clearly a far-right racist Israeli leader. And of course, no one is going to disassociate themselves from this small group of people meeting with him. And it's just one more example. And all these sort of progressive types that get whipped up about the CIJA campaign, they will completely ignore. They may not even hear about this because they follow the dominant media, and the dominant media follows CIJA's criticism, not the Canadian Council of Canadian Muslims. One of the other parts to CIJA's attack in this event for marking the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People was they clipped Elizabeth May making a speech at this event. And in this clip that CIJA puts out, this was I believe their first thing they put out before the attack against this editor of a Toronto-based Arabic newspaper. The first thing they put out was Elizabeth May saying, quote, "I take my marching orders from the permanent representative of Palestine to Canada." And so CIJA puts this out, this puts the short clip of her just saying that, and tags it with saying, particularly at a time when Canadians are increasingly concerned about foreign interference in Canadian politics, no Canadian elected official should get their marching orders from a foreign government and its official representatives. So this is CIJA complaining that Elizabeth May has said she takes her direction from the Palestinian Authority's representative in Ottawa. And there's a whole lot in there that's completely hilarious. First of all, CIJA, of course, its first three words are Center for Israel, right? It was set up to prioritize Israel. They got rid of the Canadian Jewish Congress and the Canada-Israel Committee and turned it all into the Center for Israel. It doesn't even have Canada in its name, as part of prioritizing Israel. And of course, it acts as a mouthpiece of the Israeli government. When there's a country that Israel doesn't like, they target that country. They obviously always justify whatever Israel does to Palestinians. So the hypocrisy of CIJA complaining about someone saying they take the direction from the Palestinian Authority representative is pretty comical. Now, the more you look at this question, the more ridiculous it all is. Now, Elizabeth May, of course, we know when members of the party in 2016 passed a resolution in support of partial boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, she organized one of the most remarkable undemocratic measures in Canadian political history of forcing a whole new convention just to discuss one resolution that the members passed online vote before the convention, at the convention, and ratified after the convention. And she organized a whole special general meeting 4 months later just to deal with this, try to get rid of this resolution. So she's somebody who's got a pretty tied history with CIJA. But more specifically, the Palestinian Authority is like anti-BDS. The Palestinian Authority is like sort of acts as an arm, or acts as an arm of Israel's occupation, funded entirely by the US, Canada, European Union. It's a lackey, as many Palestinians have demonstrated. It's a lackey and an enabler of Israel's occupation. So it's not really like some hardline position to say I'm taking my direction from the Palestinian Authority representative in Canada. In fact, it's actually saying I'm not taking my direction from the Palestinian civil society movement that called for the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. It's a, to a large extent, as Karen's seems to be posted in the chat, a subcontractor of the occupation. So CIJA making this big deal about Elizabeth May saying that, and is kind of humorous. And then if you go further with, you think about this, so they're implying that the PA they're tying the PA, or what Elizabeth May said, to foreign interference in Canadian politics. So the big bad Palestinians who don't even have any sovereignty over any piece of territory, they are, dependent on foreign money for everything. Obviously, the PA would collapse tomorrow without the outside support. They are like determining Canadian politics. So CJ wants us to believe that the PA is sort of like, this is a sign of the foreign interference in Canada. So the whole thing is just a total joke. It speaks to the fact, of course, that the objective of CIJA has nothing to do with a concern about foreign interference. It has nothing to do with concern about some individual at the event that newspaper either denied the Holocaust or minimized it. It has to do with protecting apartheid Israel from international solidarity and from criticism. On the Palestine question, Canada voted against a resolution, I think on Wednesday, the day after the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People. They voted against the resolution calling for a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, calling on Israel to withdraw from the occupied Palestinian territory. It passed 153 to 9. Canada was one of the 9. I think 10 countries abstained. So one more example of Canada voting against the vast majority of the world in upholding Palestinian rights. There was a article about a campaign at Carleton University calling on the university to end its use of the name the Azrieli. A number of buildings at Carleton in Ottawa are named after Azrieli. Azrieli was somebody who was involved in some of the ethnic cleansing when he fought for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians when he fought in 1948. And so there's a campaign at the university calling for the buildings to be renamed. I would doubt it's going to be successful, but I think it's a worthwhile campaign. There's an educational value to it, and it's about politicizing these the donations from the different sort of pro-Israel forces, and sort of pushing back on the sort of acceptance of some of that. And I think it's an interesting kind of rallying point for a university student body to take on something like that. And I think they had some event where they released some sort of report about Azrieli's crimes and what he's been complicit in, and then they did a public launch of the campaign. So as I mentioned in the Elizabeth May tweet from CIJA, they tried to sort of latch on to this whole idea of foreign interference in Canada, in Canadian democracy. And it's an issue that is being now brought up all over. Of course, previous years, there was all kinds of business about Russia's interference in Canada. Elections, the Trudeau government actually set up a committee with representatives of CSIS and RCMP and Communication Security Establishment and Global Affairs Canada to monitor Russian or foreign interference in Canadian elections. In recent months, most of the attention weeks has been about China, of course, and on November 7th, Global News reported on these leaks about apparent Chinese interference in the 2019 election. And the details are all really sketchy. I don't put much stock to it, but there's actually even an MP in Toronto talking about Iranian influence in Canada. Iran has a GDP per capita of something like a 15th of Canada. So the Iranians and all their power to intervene in Canada is a little bit kind of hard to believe. But hey, if the Palestinians without any sovereignty over any territory are bullying and influencing Canadian politics, why not the Iranians, who have a whole lot more power than the Palestinians? But so anyways, this whole discussion about the foreign interference in Canadian politics in recent weeks and months And it's remarkable how little attention there is to Canadian interference elsewhere, right? Like the most outlandish allegations being put out there about Chinese or Russian interference in Canada, that even if you believe the maximalist claims, they don't even compare to Canada's ongoing recognition of Juan Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela, right? It doesn't even compare, nor does it even compare to the core group. And we like part of a body that was created after we overthrew the government in Haiti in 2004 that, 16, 17 months ago dictated who the legitimate prime minister was, right? So that's ongoing. I mean, you can get into many other examples, of course, but those are the two that I could think of off, quickly, the most egregious ongoing examples of interference. But if you go further than that, the whole history of Canada's been involved in about a dozen coups, mostly against progressive elected leaders, passively, where they've supported a dozen coups, and about a dozen actively over the years. And if you look at, so you're talking about like foreign interference, Canada's role in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, right? Where we basically worked militarily to weaken him, and then a Canadian colonel in charge of the UN force basically coordinated the Mobutu's forces recapturing Lumumba, and then he was killed not long after. And that led to Mobutu's dictatorship for 30 plus years. You got, of course, slightly different than a coup, but in Libya in 2011, still 11 years later, Libya's, this intervention where we bombed and helped in the assassination of Gaddafi, 11 years later, it's the country still is sort of in turmoil. So any way you look at it, if you look at the depth of the Canadian interference elsewhere, or you look at the consequences of the Canadian interference elsewhere, like what were the allegations against China? Like they don't even approach that. And the thing about the allegations is that what's not crystal clear with Russia, maybe you could argue is slightly different with China, but crystal clear with Russia, is that like if they're intervening, like what for? All of the politicians are anti-Russia. And like all of them are kind of equally hardline anti-Russia. So why would Russia bother working to get the NDP MP or the Liberal MP or the Conservative MP elected when like it's all the same? Now with China, you could claim the Liberals are slightly less aggressive than the NDP and the Conservatives. You can make that claim. But we're talking about pretty marginal differences. So the motivation of the Chinese government to spend much effort in intervening, it seems hard to make sense of. But again, if we're really concerned about foreign interference, and I think people should be. I mean, I think it is wrong. I mean, it contravenes the UN Charter, and it should be taken seriously. But if we're serious about this question, if the media and the politicians were all serious about it, they would look at the foreign interference that Canada's currently and historically been engaged in, that is at far greater degree with far greater consequence than any allegations about possible foreign interference in Canada. And if anyone has any comments or questions, go ahead. Go ahead, Laura.
I was wondering if you could talk more about the why of these sanctions on these particular individuals in Haiti. And then I was wondering if you could also tell us about how your book tour is going, who's attending, what kind of reception are you getting? Yeah.
Well, I think the why. I don't really know. I think at this point it's hard to not say that the Trudeau government has now sanctioned forces that it has been, first of all, that it helped put in place, and then secondly, that it's been backing strenuously for a decade. That seems to me pretty clear. So now, not only someone like Michel Martelly, but also, wealthy business people.
Please mute everybody.
Yeah. So the why question has to be now something approaching that they are taking the issue a bit seriously. I mean, the disintegration of Haitian political life. I don't. This is a shift in policy from the Canadian government. I don't see how you can't. Now, is it mostly optics? Do these people have assets in Canada? I don't really know, and it's likely that it's mostly optics, but I don't think that matters completely. I think all of these individuals don't like being sanctioned by Canada, and it scares them and it puts them on the back foot. I don't see how that's not that's not the case. So the why question I'm left with, in part, is to repeat and this is the most hopeful way to look at this, which is that the Canadian government spent a couple months whipping up a whole storyline around Haiti being in a disaster situation. It needed major intervention, and they were planning or preparing. They were sort of laying the groundwork to intervene militarily. Canada wanted to intervene. They were going to lead the mission, and they were going to have Caribbean and other countries in the hemisphere, maybe also Rwandan troops that were going to be the bulk of the mission. I think that that's what they were preparing for. But the Security Council, Russia and China, blocked the US resolution. The Caribbean countries aren't going without a UN resolution. Canada wants the UN resolution. Other countries in the hemisphere want the UN resolution. Simultaneously, you have significant opposition in Haiti. You have opposition within the Haitian community here in Montreal, and sort of like the whole kind of NGO sector in Canada. There's no appetite for it. Nancy Rock, who's very close to the Canadian government and a prominent person in the Haitian community here in Montreal, who's hosted a talk with the Canadian ambassador about 4 months ago. And anyway, so she's kind of a little bit of a mouthpiece, a Haitian mouthpiece of the Canadian government. She had this story on Alter Press, kind of like this NGO-aligned media outlet on Haiti, where she sort of complains about how there's not, the NGO sector hasn't sort of like called for an intervention, and it's not getting all whipped up about how the situation's a disaster and there needs to be a solution, i.e. foreign intervention. So I think this mix of dynamics has led the Canadian government to decide, well, we don't want to do this. And then probably the Canadian military doesn't really want to be part of it. Maybe they don't have as many assets militarily as they might want. So they're saying no to the Americans to send a military mission. But they've kind of laid this groundwork that they need to do something on Haiti. And so they've started sanctioning these prominent people. That's the most, I think, positive way to look at what's happened over the past 3 months. And I think a plausible, I wouldn't say this is anything close to 100%, or I wouldn't even go with like a 90%. I don't know what we're talking about, a 65%. But I think it's a plausible explanation for what's transpired over the past 3 months. With regards to the tour, I'm done. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. I did 3 events in Southern Ontario, Toronto, Guelph, and London on the military book. And then I did Powell River, Duncan, Victoria, Nanaimo, and Vancouver on a talk titled The Ugly Canadian, Justin Trudeau's Foreign Policy. got hit by some bad weather out west. But yeah, it was decent. It was worth doing. I wouldn't have done it, except that Bianca and the kids are in Uganda, so I wouldn't have done it if I had parental duties. But I didn't have that, so it was the right time to do it. And one thing that's interesting, is that like there people come out to these events surprisingly that you hadn't even heard of the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, right? So that you'd think if somebody comes out to an in-person physical event, they were kind of like already tied in. But you go to Powell River and it's like the Council of Canadians chapter. It's like two events. One in the daytime was like 16 to 17 people, and one at night there was like 12 or 13 people. It goes through like a different network, right? So like it goes through the Powell River Council of Canadians kind of milieu, and you sort of reach out to slightly different people. So it's a lot of work, a lot of travel, to do events of that size. Because I have books and I'm selling books, it's worth it financially, because that's, you can sell books and generate some income that way. But it's a little bit tiring. Go ahead, Yuri.
Just about Haiti. Owen Hughes wrote, "Please call Michel Martelly Sweet Mickey. It is so much more appropriate." And actually, Eve, I've been meaning on asking you this question for a long time, but since obviously you are part Quebec, you are based in Montreal, and I'm just curious, do you ever follow French media and what's happening in France, and any idea on the state of the French anti-war movement, or Black Lives Matter, or the Muslim Middle East Lives Matter movements there, and people who fight against state racism in France, and any plans to try to publish all of your books in French, so that maybe French-speaking bookstores and stuff like that in Belgium or in France or in Switzerland could or parts of Africa can get access to your work. And then also curious, have you tried to reach out to any libertarian anti-imperialists in Canada? And then also just curious where you stand on all the football politics drama. Which I'm an agnostic on. I see good arguments on all sides, but I've decided to remain agnostic on it.
Yeah, I used to read Libération and Le Monde and Le Figaro. They don't come to well, I actually just started physical like a computer printout at the Bibliothèque Nationale, where they actually have it day of, and they've gotten rid of the French papers. But I haven't really been reading the French papers for a number of years. So I'm not really following sort of the French politics on that stuff. With regards to there was a second piece to the question, but with regards to could you just mention the issues again? How's
the French anti-war movement doing compared to Quebec?
I have very little sense of that. I know I saw some images of a protest in Paris at one point in that said it was thousands of people against NATO. With regards to like translating book, it's actually kind of remarkable. I've tried to get most of my books translated into French. I've had the Stop Signs book was actually translated into Korean, but I've never had a book translated into French. And it's a really kind of a problematic situation where the Quebec publishers publish they translate like I don't know, like Naomi Klein's books or Chomsky's books, and because they can then sell into the French and Belgian market. So there's not much interest in Canadian policy in those markets, but there is interest in U.S. policy. So it's actually I've tried it, and there's actually an individual who might even be on this call was willing to translate the book himself, the latest one, the Stand on Guard for Whom, and they just don't I guess they don't see that there's a market to even sell a few hundred copies. So they don't bother, which is, I think, quite unfortunate.
I'll just jump in very quickly and say that we have Waterstone, which is an English bookstore in Brussels, and I could always ask them, hey, I know this historian, journalist, and activist, Yves Engler. You guys should try to invite him here and check out all these books, and then maybe you could I'm sure you'll probably meet Francophones or Flemish folks who would probably be very interested and say, okay, maybe we can try to translate or at least invite you over and you can to speak to our.
Yeah, I've been through this enough to know that there really isn't that much interest in Canadian foreign policy in elsewhere, and I wouldn't as much as I wouldn't mind on a sort of personal level, like going to Brussels or whatever from a political standpoint. I don't see that, but. Yeah, I think it's actually kind of outrageous that these Quebec publishers that actually receive lots of public funding, right? They get a lot of public funding for the translations and stuff like that. They actually translate books about the U.S. And then they get funded to do that by the Canadian government. So yeah, but on that note, that just makes me think of anybody if their local public library, if you can order my books to your local public library, that is very helpful. Just that both it gets them in the libraries, and then also there's a library lending license sort of payment scheme that the more libraries it's in, the more they pay. But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thanks. I just have to say, I'm really impressed by your full spectrum approach that you speak, give webinars, talks, and books, and then get in the politicians' faces. And so was it just last week? I missed last Monday, but I saw on Telegram your latest intervention in Deputy Minister Freeland's meeting, and that was kind of widely circulating on different Telegram channels. Like on the Donbass and Slavyangrad and other left-wing channels, as well as the Russian. I mean, I'm not looking across a wide spectrum, but that's where I found it. It really got around, and I didn't see it on immediate Canadian channels, but it's got great coverage, and I just wondered. I mean, at least in that area, and that is international. So and so that those videos are kind of impactful, I think. I mean, every time you come in and confront them and just short, concise, loud, and then get thrown out. I guess I'm wondering, first of all, are you aware of kind of the circulation of the impact of this? I mean, is somebody taking the videos so that you're sure that it's captured well? Plus, there's a really nice blurb for that. I mean, it's a short post, but a couple paragraphs, and they make the rounds. I repost it myself, and I'm just also wondering, should we try this? Would it help you if a few others were there, or is it there seems to be just as good of impact with one person, but it's usually like you or Tamara. But maybe if this got around more, how would you recommend that we try this at home if we should? So
yeah, I certainly recommend that people try this not at home, but in wherever they are, where you can practice before at home. But yeah, I mean, I get a sense of how that they circulate, and I certainly see on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm not on Telegram. I know some appear on Instagram and some appear on TikTok, and there's different outlets that sort of take it from my Twitter or wherever and share it and kind of repackage it a little bit and share them around. So yeah, I'm certainly aware at a macro level that the interventions are getting around. The more people doing it, the better. Now, and I mean that both at the personal level, like often it's just me going in there and me filming it. And of course, I do believe that from the standpoint of getting circulating on Twitter and Facebook and maybe Telegram and others, I'm not sure it does necessarily. The more people you have in there, the more circulation you get, though it won't, I don't think it would hurt. From the standpoint of disrupting an event, and the more disruptive the event, the more disruptive the protest is, the higher the odds of the dominant media covering. Right. So if one person goes in and makes a speech and gets kicked out, and then 30 seconds later, another person gets up and makes a speech and gets kicked out, and 30 seconds later, another person, right? The odds of the dominant media covering it, if they're assuming there's media in the room, go up and then go up quite significantly. So it is better to have more people in the room if you can get more people in the room, because it generally can be more disruptive. There's no downside from the standpoint of taking our own video, and there's an upside in this from the standpoint of the disruptive effect and the big media who may or may not be in the room. But also I think is a matter of just more people doing it in different places, right? That's over time, if we can be doing this at more events, we can be having a greater impact, both on social media and with corporate media, and also, quite frankly, making the life of the politicians more difficult, right? Like if they have to be secretive about where they're hosting their thing, it just makes their life more difficult. It makes it more difficult to do some of the the photo ops they would like in terms of some venues or settings outside or in like the Jean Talon market, like when we did with Blinken and Jolie. So those things I think are also relevant. But yeah, I mean, I'm if you send me an email, I'm happy to say where you are, what city is possible. I do search out the names of different politicians actually in some of the people from Disruption Network Canada who were in London, Ontario, found out a couple of days ago that Trudeau was going to be there, and then found out he was going to be at the university. And I sent it to people there, and they tried to get something going. They ultimately weren't able to get down to where the event was. But that's, when Disruption Network Canada was functioning better in 2019, that's part of what we were doing, was we were sharing the information, and we had, people in a few places that were, ready to act fairly quickly. And that's, that's how we had some positive.
I didn't know about Disruption Network. That might be. I'm coordinator with World Beyond War in Toronto, and so we're growing a larger number of people now. We've got a couple of other people involved. I'm a professor. I can't do that much. I'm not like, well, I can, but I tend to write more, but I do show up at events, and we can get people like on a day's notice to show up at NATO, or like when George Bush spoke at the Telus Center, and just a small number of people we can get. Either Tamara went into that event live and made and she's always good for a confrontation. But we also want people outside too. So it might be something that we can coordinate and hand off, take multiple videos and things like that. So in Toronto.
Yeah, no, and obviously Toronto is the place that has the most events too, right? So it's important to have a little group in Toronto doing it, because it's got the most. The other thing is that you don't have to necessarily be part of if you can go inside and not necessarily be part of a disruption, but either just support others who might be prepared to do it and also take video. That can also be a role that can there's different dynamics where that can work.
Sure. Leave books. Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead, Sally.
Well, I just want to say, Eve, I was at your your book launch in Nanaimo, and I just want to say I really appreciate it. I know it must be very hard traveling this time of year, coming with small audiences, and just that slog of making all these talks and traveling around and never knowing if there's any effect or not. But I want to tell you, you more than anybody else has helped me articulate and realize Canadian complicity with what goes on in imperialism worldwide, and Canadian complacency. And I just feel so grateful to you for that. And bit by bit and person by person, we can influence Canadians, and we need to keep doing this. And every one of us has ways in which we can participate. So, I mean, I'm 76. I'm not gonna, and I live in a tiny Gulf island. So I just won't be in the centers of, power disrupting, but I can write, and I do write, and I can speak, and I do speak. And you have a great influence, and you can just carry on, because I think that it's going to be a long time before people realize, in a sense, what you have contributed to the Canadian landscape. And it's huge. So thank you to you.
Thanks, Sally.
Yeah, I would say ditto on that. This is Laurel. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say a couple of things. A very good series of articles on the World Socialist website, Canadian Imperialism and Its Fascist Friends. Very good series of articles about Canada and Ukraine and Chrystia Freeland and the connections between Ukraine and the Canadian government. Quite revealing and educational. Secondly, the thing I was going to say is I think one of the reasons why it's difficult to do disruptions is that, as we've said before, it's hard to figure out when people are going to be in town. And I was talking to somebody in David Morrison's office this morning. He's the new Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister in Ottawa. And the person that I was speaking to was kind of in charge of attaching phone callers to the right people and so on. But he was telling me that they do not know the schedule of ministers themselves, because it changes all the time, and that it's impossible to know where they're going to be, except by going into the news and seeing if there's going to be if there's an announcement in the media, because their schedule changes. He said Melanie Joly does not print her schedule because nobody knows what it is, or what it's going to be. Then the third thing I was going to say quickly is I think one of the reasons why Canada doesn't talk about its own interference in foreign countries is because it hides behind the United States, and it pretends that it's the United States that is the one who's interfering, and is the bad person and the one that critics ought to be attacking. And meanwhile, we're doing all kinds of stuff behind the curtain that most Canadians don't know about, but that you're exposing all the time, Eve. That's all I was going to say.
So yeah, one thing I just want to say about it's totally correct around the ministers and the prime minister. It's very last minute, and the best place to find out about it is being on the Politico daily brief. I don't know what they call it exactly, and the Hill Times. They both send out a thing early in the morning, like 5 or 6 in the morning, with where the different ministers are going to be that day. That's the best thing for that. But the other thing is, as we did, Laurel, there's there's conferences of like arms makers. There's conferences of other kinds of, maybe not the top ministers or prime minister, but of like arms companies and conferences and this and that. That also, I think, it's good, like what we did with the one here in Montreal, where we bring an anti-militarist message, and share it on even if there's no corporate media there, and share it on social media. So I think there are other, if you start thinking a bit creatively about some of the possibilities, It's actually there's more than just the main ministers, even if they are ultimately the sort of the biggest prizes. There's also opposition, right? I think we should be challenging Jagmeet Singh, opposition, obviously on his position on a bunch of foreign policy issues, as well, obviously, of course, the conservatives. So there are opportunities if people start thinking through things in a bit more of a maximalist kind of way and a little bit creatively. There are other kind of opportunities. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just you were mentioning the French, and I would how about the Québécois, the francophone de chez nous? Are you in touch with any of them? And because you're bilingual, and in the past, Quebec has produced a lot of very active people on the left, and there's the question of Haiti as well, all the francophones there. What about Quebec Solidaire? Is there any international motion with that group that's noticeable? And what you really need is a Quebec colleague, to carry out some of your actions.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a whole bunch of disruptions of Solidarité Québec Haïti that are in French, and then we've done some of the Mouvement Québécois pour la Paix. Also, the first disruptions we did of Christian Freeland back at Université de Montréal, and then we did one with Sajan. So yeah, there's I'm involved with different Québécois anti-war kind of individuals and groups, and in terms of so there's some of that dynamic. When I was talking about the translation of books, it's about getting it into that's precisely what the objective is to get it, offer it to francophone Quebecers in a way that's much more accessible than a book in English is, and the Quebec publishers have yet to be interested in doing that. But I'm definitely connected in. I'm obviously more comfortable in English, but I'm connected in with Québécois, francophone Québécois kind of groups in terms of organizing stuff. So if there's no more other questions or comments, it's after 7 o'clock. So same time, same place next Monday. Take care, everyone.
Now, Eve.
Yeah.